All right, everyone. So this week we are looking at the Ideas Writing Lesson Plan. We were looking before at kind of the general roadmap for a 6 traits lesson plan for writing with those key components that you would need to set it up. So this is using that framework that was in the whiteboard video to kind of look at how to set up an Ideas Writing lesson plan. The goal being that you're hitting those key components. Of course, each lesson may be a little different. It's going to depend on the needs of your students. So this is going to kind of outline a roadmap for what you can do with the ideas trait using that writing lesson plans format, as well as kind of give you ideas for where to take it based on where your students are at. So to start with, just like we said in the whiteboard video, you need to find out the key quality you want to focus on. So you have these 4 key qualities in the ideas trait that we're going to be looking at, and you're trying to determine what is the aspect that your students need the most help with. Now, in the beginning of the year, it's going to be easy. You're going to want to make sure that you teach your students about each of these elements. And all throughout the year, you're going to probably need to kind of rehash and kind of fine tune the elements as you work with different genres within writing. Although for right now, we're just going to kind of look at focusing in on a topic, developing the topic, using the details. So we're looking at these traits to determine how best to address our student needs. So again, you've got these idea key qualities. I like to just put a little image with it to help the students understand the key qualities of ideas. You can create your own. You're welcome to use these as well. But this just gives them a kind of visual to hone in on, okay, we're finding our topic, we're really looking close and focusing it, then we're working hard to develop it, and then we're going to be adding specific details to really make our ideas strong. So however you want to present that, it's important to use that trait language with your students and make sure they understand what are the key qualities of the idea trait. When you're looking at grading for ideas, they're going to need to hit all of these elements. So you're going to need to make sure you teach and model and help them in those conferences. So when I'm planning a writing instruction, I always like to start out by looking at the rubric. So this is just a portion of the writing rubric, and you may use any rubric you like. This is the one that comes with the 6-trait program from Ruth Cullum, and this just looks at this high exceptional writing. I like to kind of look at what would the top bar be, what is the end goal. Obviously every student's going to be different and they're not all going to be at this exceptional rate. However, you want to try to get them towards that. So when you're planning your lesson, you want to look at, okay, what do I need to do for finding the big idea? What is considered exceptional? And you look here, it's clear, coherent, and original. Same thing for focusing the big idea. Again, your idea is to use this to plan your instruction, because if this is going to be how you're scoring them, you want to make sure you're hitting on the components that you're going to be grading them on. And I like to, this is the teacher-friendly version. They also have a student-friendly version. I like to kind of walk my students through the rubric as well. Maybe not necessarily showing them all the words because they are first graders and a lot of words will overwhelm them, but just explaining, okay, we're working on ideas. When we're talking about big ideas, this is what I expect. When we're talking about focusing it, I expect this, staying with it. So then that way they know exactly what you expect and where you're hoping to end up with. And of course, writing is going to be a developmental process. It's not going to be something that you see necessarily the first time that you do this. It's going to be a year-long process. Just knowing where your end goal is will help you plan your instruction. So after you've done that, here's that roadmap we had before where we chose the trait, chose the key quality. Then we're going to think about that focus lesson and mentor text, what independent practice we want, and what we're going to do for conferences. So now that I've looked at the rubric, I kind of know which key quality and which trait we're working in with ideas. So we're going to go ahead and decide on our focus lesson. So for our focus lesson, I'm going to be looking at really using specific details and kind of honing in on that. So if we go back to that key quality, thinking about using these juicy details, having them get ideas to clarify this big idea, create meaning, and really show what's important. So here's just a sample focus lesson I've used before. And again, as we talked about in that whiteboard video, this focus lesson can be anything. It can be role playing with your students. You can act it out. If you're working with organization, for example, you might have them act out putting on clothes in the wrong order and trying to do things out of order so they understand the importance of order. For ideas, sometimes I find it is really helpful to use these pictures. Clearly, if you look at all of these kids, there's some common things. So I might just put this up there for the students, not really telling them what I'm expecting, but just having them look at these images and asking them, what do you notice about these kids? How do they feel? What do their faces look like? What do you think happened? What made them feel this way? So kind of getting that discussion going and having them focus on the details of just the image and really getting them to not just say, oh, they look sad, they look mad, but be like, they look really unhappy. Look at how they're crying. Look at how he's screaming. He's not even able to open his eyes. Getting them to kind of pull out the details from the pictures before we even look at words. So this kind of focuses them in on looking at details within just an image so that they can then apply those details to their writing. So then we move into the mentor text, and this was a lesson that I adapted from Writing Fix, and I will have the resources and places where you can get these ideas posted on the Moodle website. But this one was a great one for me. It tied in with that angry picture that we saw before. It's a book called When Sophie Gets Angry, really, really angry. And it's a really cute story. It's pretty simple, but it goes through how she acts when she's angry. Specifically, what sets her off, then in each stage of her anger, what is she doing? What, it compares her to a volcano. It says she roars, she kicks, she screams. It gives them a specific detail so they don't just say, when I'm mad, I cry. I want them to go beyond that. How do you cry? What do you do? Do you stomp your feet? And we kind of read that and we talk about it. Now, in the end of the book, she calms down and she comes back into it. So I use that as a chance to really show the students, this transformation. Now, usually before they go to do their independent writing practice, I actually stop the book and I don't finish it because I don't want them to see her calm back down, because I really want them to just hone in on that angry piece and the details of angry. And I don't want them to get confused and start to give me details about how they calm down or what it looks like after they're angry. I will eventually, at the end, after they've done their piece, I finish the book because most of them want to find out how it ends. But for this specific lesson, I just focus in on the aspect of angry and read only the portion of the text, kind of modeling my think aloud and modeling, oh, wow, do you see how the author showed she was angry in her picture, in her words, and stopping them before it gets into a new idea, because that's what I'm trying to avoid. I really want them to focus in, and while this lesson is about using juicy details, I know the bigger picture of ideas for that rubric is making sure they stay with one topic. So I don't want them to move from angry to calm just yet. So after that mentor text, then we talk about that independent writing practice. And that can be, whatever you feel works. And I usually do a little bit of a combination of all of these things just because that's what my writers need. I teach a lower instruction group and they just need that additional practice. So we do a discussion first and we kind of pull it out. We make a chart on the board of different ideas they have. Then I give them a graphic organizer, and then depending on that, they might go into a writing piece using that graphic organizer. So just some examples of what I've done in the past. I might give them a bubble map that just says, when I'm angry, and then this is a chance for them to write down some of those ideas of what they do when they're angry. Then I've also done it in a different format, again, depending on my group. One year I had a very low group who needed much more spelled out graphic organizers. So here, they put their name, so it would be when whoever gets angry. So this is their take, their spin-off of that, when Sophie gets angry. And here they're telling me what made them angry, and then 3 specific things And then in the book, like I said, she compares herself to a volcano ready to explode. So here we talk about different items. And the back of that organizer looks like this. So their ending is finally I, and whatever their last thing is. Again, I don't want them focusing on how they calm down. So I just tell them, what's the last thing you do when you're angry? And a lot of them will say, run to mom and dad, or cry, or hide under the covers. So it's a great ending to a story, which kind of leads into organization later on. But using this graphic organizer, I've gotten them to focus on those juicy details because they've told me specifically different items that were angry. They compared themselves to something angry so we really get that vivid picture of what's important. And then they've kind of got an ending to their idea of what was angry. And then from there, it depends on the group, and sometimes I use this as my bigger writing project. So we kind of, instead of just having the writing project in the back seat, they are going to use this and write about it because a lot of them enjoyed writing about it. So I'll actually go around and be conferencing with them using that trait language, asking them, did you give me some juicy details? Did you really only focus in on that one big idea of being angry? Again, I don't want them to show me what they do when they calm down. So I'm asking them specific questions. I might model my thinking aloud and say, when I'm angry, I stomp my feet or I clench my fists, giving them some of those words that for them is hard for them to kind of put into words. They know what they can do and they say, oh yeah, I do that. Or I'll have some that say, I don't do that, I do this. But they didn't think about doing that until I told them what I do when I'm angry. And of course, while I'm going around, I'm really focusing on telling them the great points of their writing and giving them suggestions, but not letting them think they've done something wrong. The goal is for them to be writing and to continue to develop. So I don't want them to think they've done the wrong thing or not doing the assignment right. It's not about doing it right. It's about doing what they've done and then getting them to kind of work those key qualities in and work in that specific focus lesson. So I'm encouraging them, and I always tell them, if we're in writing class, I do not spell for you. I make them sound it out. I make them look at word walls, but I won't spell the word for them because I want them to not be hindered by that spelling. And then after my conferences, then I kind of think about, okay, do we really have it? Do we need more practice on having juicy details? And if we do, sometimes I might even take that same book and instead of doing when I'm angry, we flip it. We'll do when I'm sad. And we talk about all the things we do when we're sad or when I'm happy and kind of take the same lesson that they're comfortable with, but we switch it and we change the graphic organizer so that they're really getting practice with those juicy details. Again, thinking about, okay, maybe they need more modeling. They haven't had that much exposure with writing. Maybe I need to pull in some more books. Maybe I need to just show them my thinking of what I would do. But if they do have it, you can move to that bigger writing piece. Now, like I said, because my students really enjoyed working with this when I'm angry, I actually turned this into a bigger writing piece where they then wrote their story from their graphic organizer about being angry. So it was a great chance for them to take the focus lesson that we did on juicy details and then turn it into a bigger writing where I could go around and conference with them and get them to then include, okay, we've got this idea, but we still need to make sure we've got our title, we've got a beginning, we've got our ending, helping them work on those things, incorporating that juicy details and giving them ideas. Now, because my students are struggling readers and often have a difficult time with their spelling, I try to stop them frequently and let them share. One, because then I know what they write. And two, because then it's fresh in their minds and they can read what they've written. If we come back to it a couple days later, they might not be able to read what they've written, which is okay because they were writing it. But if I've heard them and I've been conferencing with them and then they've shared with the class, I usually can figure out what they've been writing. Or I've made a note on top of their writing with the real spelling. I don't make them change their inventive spelling, but I might pencil it in on top just so they will remember and so I will remember. And again, like I said, I'm constantly going around conferencing when we're graphic organizing. I'm going around giving them ideas and going back and forth within, checking them with the struggling students. Then when we're writing, I'm checking in with those struggling students again, but I do make sure I meet with every single student, circling back to the struggling students because they're generally going to be the ones that get stumped and might kind of play or do something different if you're not kind of constantly checking in with them. And then at the end, the cycle starts again. You determine, all right, do they have it? What's the next step for us? What writing trait should we focus on next? What should our writing lesson plan be? Where do we need to go from here?